feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun. Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the Cowboys.
Call this college rule. Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast here with another installment. It's Cris and Dom, and today we're back on the gridiron.
Yeah, we're talking about probably the second or third greatest receiver of his era. It's hard to even, say because these guys were so great, but we're talking about Cris Carter.
Yeah, Cris. Don't call me Christopher Carter.
That's right, because it is just Cris.
It is. Actually, his birth Christian name is Gradual, like legit the word gradual, Christopher Darren Carter, born November 25th, 1965 in Troy, Ohio.
And then I think he said in the 6th or 7th grade, he was like, I can't go by gradual anymore.
Yeah.
This was a gradual step that I had to take to change my name to Cris. And it was like, okay. And like literally, he said, I don't think he ever legally changed it. He just started going by Cris, and it's just on all of his, not his birth certificate, but all of his other information.
And that's like a weird name because it's not like boy named Sue where it like makes you fight. It's just like, where the F did this come from?
Yeah, no, seriously.
Named after his grandfather, though,
yeah.
I will add, but not really hip to the 20th century.
No. That one, I mean, they had to have known, even when he was born in 65, that's still, you're like, all right, we're going to give this guy's name. We might go by his middle name. That's the only thing.
Let's throw some Scrabble pieces against the wall and see what happens.
Hey, that's Grandpa's name.
We're just going through the dictionary.
Well, names are different back then, you know? And I'm not saying when he was, I'm saying when his grandfather was named. So, like, that was different because, man, I imagine he got picked on through elementary school because it's hard for little kids to gravitate and pick on anything that's, like, not out of the ordinary, and that was probably so out of the ordinary that.
But I would just be more confused than make fun of him.
Yeah,
I'd just be like, dude, I'm not even gonna pick on you, but just like explain this to me.
Yeah,
like let's go shoot some hoops or something. But anyway, back to our friend Gradual Cris. He moved to Middletown, Ohio. He was the son to a single mom, had 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and lived in the projects there.
Yep.
Very rough upbringing, but his older brother, Butch, who we'll get into later, sports was kind of their refuge, as we find in most of these episodes where the athletes we cover are economically disadvantaged as youngsters.
Well, he said Butch was like his father figure. He was his older brother, and he kind of like set him straight as to what it was to be an athlete and to put in the time to really do that because Butch was a professional basketball player.
Yeah, and played at Indiana too under Bobby Knight. I mean, like, this is and basketball was actually Chris's first love.
Yeah.
And, he had the size. I mean, the dude was like 6'3", 200 pounds. So, I mean, in that era of the NBA, he definitely could have played and was a fantastic athlete and was great on the basketball court, but finds football and finds a lot of success at Middletown High School.
Well, it's interesting because, like you said, his older brother plays basketball. He was really thought of as a basketball player, and then when he hit that gridiron, man, he just went. I mean, like, he couldn't get caught, or guys couldn't catch him, and his hands, which will probably come back again, were even back then so much better than everybody else. And there was a comment that Butch said that he was like, you could tell the other kids playing high school sports were just playing to play. Cris was playing to be on that next level, and he just was.
And, when you're poverty-stricken, you want to get the F out of wherever you are at that current moment.
And that was the other thing that his brother taught him was just like, see these 5 guys on the corner? They're still going to be there 10 years later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he really instilled in him, like, we can get out of here if we put this effort in.
Although he wasn't, like you said, his father, I mean, he was that strong male role model that, every kid in a crappy situation does need.
Yeah.
And kind of showed him the way. And Cris is so good in high school that he earns a football scholarship to the Ohio State University.
That's right.
You have to put the in front of it because
to.
You're a Big Ten douche canoe.
You have to. Foregoing, a lot of people thought he was going to go to Florida.
Yeah,
because
like
Florida
his
was
hero Cris Collinsworth, the Wooderson he named himself after.
That was the big talk, was that he wanted to play basketball and football, and Ohio State was like, yeah, you can come here and do both. And then became quickly apparent that he was a football player.
And it's weird because this is the 3 yards in a cloud of dust Ohio State team. They have never seen a wide receiver like Cris Carter before.
It's so true because, like you said, they were not a high-volume passing team, and he was even in his freshman year,
yeah,
he was
he
catching
starts right
and running.
away.
Yeah.
41 catches in 1984 for 648 yards and 8 touchdowns. They go 9-3 and make it to a Rose Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, Cris has an amazing Rose Bowl, though, by the way. This is where he's put on the map as like the next great wide receiver in college. 9 catches in the game for 172 yards as a true freshman.
As a true freshman in the Rose Bowl, he was saying, like, hey, you put me on this pedestal, I'll deliver.
Yeah, he always seemed to show up in these big games. But they ended up losing 20-17 to USC, but it's okay because in 1985, keeps improving. 58 catches for 980 yards or 950 yards and 8 touchdowns. Go 9-3 again, and they beat BYU 10-7 in the Citrus Bowl. He had in this game, you can go to YouTube and catch the highlight. The quarterback is throwing the ball away, right? In this game, like throwing it out of bounds. Cris makes an amazing one-handed catch. And I'm sure you saw that.
And
highlight.
drags his feet.
Yeah, and drags his feet. It's like,
well, that was like the beginning. The beginning of that, because I feel like receivers kind of like in this era where this is the first time where they were like, no, I'm going to catch everything that's near me. And it was just kind of like, oh, like he would practice one-handed catches. He would.
With the jugs machine.
Yeah, he was literally like a modern day wide receiver in 85.
It's like the replacements. He didn't need any of that stickum where like, coach, it looks like I just jacked off an elephant.
That's his hands were made of that. That was the thing, and that I feel like this
Clifford Franklin
really was one of the first plays where people are like, "Oh shit, here we go."
Yeah, right. So 1986. This is his like banner year in college. First Ohio State All-American at wide receiver, first team I should add. 69 catches, over 1,100 yards receiving, 11 touchdowns, and they win the Cotton Bowl 28-12 against Texas A&M. And you're thinking, well, he's coming back for his senior year, 1987. He could theoretically win the Heisman.
Well, at this point, he was, after his junior year, he was Ohio State's receiving record holder, yards, and touchdowns. So, like, literally, he was the best receiver they've ever seen. And he's coming back to this
stacked Ohio State
this program that is ready for,
Rose Bowl National Championship.
Yep.
And I wanted to add this because I did my own research. We had covered Sterling Sharp on a previous episode.
Yep.
And that year in 1987, college football, Sterling Sharp was incredible for South Carolina. Tim Brown, a wide receiver, won the Heisman Trophy, the last one to do it until Devontae Smith a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Cris would have probably been in that same draft class in 1988. Unfortunately, there is no 1987 season for Cris Carter.
Well, that draft class would have been the most stacked wide receivers that we've ever seen. Yeah. But what happens, and which is sad with American college sports, is he literally signed with an agent early to get money in. And what he was saying in interviews, he was just like, I was tired of selling out stadiums and being poor.
Yeah, and this is the thing. This is not now with the NIL and players are getting a cut or even off of jersey sales. If you were in the 80s college football, unless you're in that Southwestern Conference getting paid under the table, you make nothing.
He said he was scrounging quarters to call his mom.
You are giving reach-arounds for red cream soda near the I-10.
And he's the biggest player on Ohio State campus. So, that's the thing that...
Student athletes.
Yes. Oh, my God, sir. You are so clever.
I say so.
I say. And that's literally what he said. He was like, I was done with it. I was done being like, I want to go get 2 pieces of pizza. And they're like, well, you can only afford 1. That kind of shit, where it was like the worst setup for these players who were making hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's what he said. He was like, I was done with it.
Yeah.
The only thing he regrets is kind of screwing over his Ohio State teammates.
Screwing over the team and lying in front of a grand jury.
That was huge.
And he will readily admit this.
Yep.
Like everything else, he's like, yeah, I was sick of being poor. And yeah, I did lie. And I did get my head coach Earl Bruce fired because of this, and I let down my teammates, and that's the worst thing I did. But taking the money, no,
because
not at all.
I mean, he deserved it. That not necessarily the avenue, but he deserved to get paid for what he was doing. He wasn't paid, so then we get him coming into the NFL a year early.
The supplemental draft in 1987. And I did want to point out he left Ohio State in only 3 years as the career leader in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns, and is in their school's Hall of Fame.
Yep.
So Mr. Ohio State Buckeye did want to point that out for his awesome college career cut short by some, well, sketchy rules and also sketchy decision making.
Well, and this is what people were saying because he was a first-round wide receiver.
Yeah.
And then after all of this happened, he was also bringing a lot of like baggage from Ohio State that necessarily wasn't public, like partying and just like a lot of shit. So he ends up getting dropped down to a 4th round in the supplemental draft. So that's not even in the regular.
Yeah, so basically what the supplemental draft is, it's held after the regular college draft. And what ends up happening is it's the same 7 rounds as far as like the regular draft order. Now, any team can pick any players who are eligible for this. It doesn't happen very often. Bernie Kosar is another famous example. We might even go into another episode one day. But what basically happens is you can pick a player wherever you want in the 7 rounds. And if you pick a guy, say, in the 1st round, you have to forfeit your following year's 1st round pick in the regular draft. So, there aren't a lot of examples of supplemental draft, stuff in the NFL history, but this is one of them. And he drops to the 4th round, like you said, because these NFL people, they can find the baggage.
Yes.
They can find the baggage.
And they see it.
And honestly, lying in front of a jury, not the greatest thing, and also the mail fraud charges as well, because accepting the money and whatnot. But down to the 4th round, and he goes to the Flipadelphia Eagles.
Flipadelphia.
Flipadelphia.
It's one of these things where he's lucky and unlucky because in Philly, he just parties all the much more. Like, his lifestyle doesn't change going into the NFL. It like ramps up.
Yeah, I mean, and you're with fans that like booing Santa and throwing hoagies at him, and Buddy Ryan is your head coach bringing that 46 defense and all sorts of fun.
Well, I thought it was interesting because when you get drafted from the supplemental draft, you don't have a preseason with your team.
Yeah.
So what he was saying when he came in that first season, he was just like, I can't run these pro routes. I don't know them yet, but I'll tell you what I can do is take a corner route to the end zone.
And in his first NFL catch, that first year was a touchdown from Ramblin' Randall Cunningham.
Yep.
He doesn't play very often because the Eagles have like Mike Quick and other, offensive weapons, Keith Byers and stuff, a teammate of his at Ohio State.
And he's learning the pro offense. So that was something else that he might have had more playing time in that first season if he had a preseason, but we see them be like, okay, you have potential.
And the Eagles are starting to improve because when they hired Buddy Ryan after Super Bowl 20 in January of '86, they were the dregs, of the NFC. But now they're starting to really put some talent together. The defense is starting to gel with Jerome Brown and Seth Joyner and Andre Dirty Waters. Like, they're really doing well. And in 1988, they actually win the NFC East. And Carter has a good year. He improves. He's got 39 catches for 751 yards and 6 touchdowns. And they make the playoffs, and they lose in the famous Fog Bowl game.
Yep. And I hate to say this, but this is a thing that happens in Chris's career where I feel like he's on a team that's favored, and then they end up losing.
If the fog doesn't roll in, they probably beat Hurricane Ditka.
Yeah.
Is all I'm going to say.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
That man is a wizard.
The name of the hurricane was Hurricane Ditka.
But he just keeps improving. That's the thing, is you could tell.
He keeps improving on the field and off it. In '89, he has 45 catches for 605 yards and 11 touchdowns in 1989. Like, you're thinking, this is the future of the Philadelphia Eagles at the wide receiver position.
Absolutely.
You're rolling into 1990. You're thinking, all right, a couple of playoff berths in a row. This is their time to shine and Chris's time to get that Buku Dolores contract. And he doesn't play for them in 1990.
Well, this is what is so crazy and probably is the craziest part of his entire career is he gets busted for coke, and he got busted before, I believe, for marijuana.
Yeah.
And he said in interviews that he had a problem with weed, coke, and ecstasy. And
I think we all do in the comedy community.
Come on. But Buddy Ryan said, he goes, I didn't realize it was such a problem because back then they would be like, hey, we're pissing everybody in 2 days. You need to stop. And he was like, I didn't realize it was such a problem until Cris couldn't stop for 3 days on the off chance he would get tested.
Because, like, weed'll stay in your system for, like, what, up to a month?
Yeah, something
Coke
like that.
is like 48 hours.
Yes, it's
like,
very
if
quick.
you can't handle your business and they're warning you, it's not like they just show up, surprise, Zoolander style. Like, come on.
Well, that's what Buddy Ryan was saying was he was just like, I didn't realize what a huge problem this was for you. And in probably one of the best coaching moments ever, he ends up cutting Cris Carter and keeping the drug pissing hot to himself and two of the defensive teammates.
Jerome Brown and Seth Joyner, like the defensive captains. Seth Joyner, who is a glorious person, basically said, like, we were freaking pissed at him.
He
like,
literally said,
not at Buddy, but at Cris.
No, I wanted to choke him.
Yeah.
And you were just like, yeah, all right.
I get it. Like, but for all of his faults as a head coach, I mean, amazing defensive coordinator, but Buddy Ryan is beloved by absolutely all of his players. And I don't think he could have done him any more favors because when he cut him, he kept it secret. And the running joke throughout the 90s as Cris Carter basically turns his career and life around, they had asked Buddy Ryan, why did you cut your Pro Bowl level receiver? And he said, all he does is catch touchdowns.
Which
deflected everything away from the nose candy and other assorted goodies.
And he ate that comment for the rest of his career.
But you know what? It had to make him really proud to be like, I made
every
the right decision. You know, good God, he's beating me. But you know what? I helped a young man out for the rest of his entire life. And Cris Carter, you know, later on they had an interview with him, and Buddy Ryan was so grateful for what he did because he needed a change of scenery.
I was going to say, he gave him this opportunity, and this is where we go and see Cris turn his life around. And luckily, he gets picked up by the Minnesota Vikings, who have in place at this time one of the first drug rehab programs for these guys. They were like one of the first like pioneers of it in the NFL.
This isn't some parrot in a costume handing out cocaine in a Three Rivers Stadium bathroom. We're on a new age.
You come to the bathroom, the mascot's going to meet you there. The mascot,
Dave Parker, will be in the stall next to you, not doing anything wrong.
For a second, I thought you were going to say Dave Parker will be in the Hall of Fame. Our Hall of Fame.
Also our Hall of Fame. But no, September 4th, 1990. Sorry I got off track, buddy. My mind just went in a fucked up direction. They claimed him for $100. So it's all about that single Benjamin.
Well, the crazy thing about this is you think of guys' careers that just don't turn around. They go to wherever and they keep partying or they keep fucking up. And Vince Carter turned it around.
And what better place than the Great White North, where it's just Siberia for most of the year?
Well, that was probably another thing that helped was it's not a party town.
No, so, I mean, it is a party town
Not
now.
in 1990.
Not in 1990.
Don't
you know?
It was very much of just like what you think Minnesota is. And I thought it was interesting because he came in and teammates said, because he wasn't sober when he first showed up at the Vikings.
No.
He got sober in that first season.
Yeah, so, and it was good for him because they had established veteran, great player Anthony Carter, no relation, and also Hassan Jones as their starting wide receiver. So he can be eased into this team. They picked him up for $100.
Yep.
Like, you just want to get this guy well, and you're not saying like, hey, go out on Sunday and win the game for us.
Well, nobody was expecting him to start putting up Hall of Fame numbers.
No.
Like, they picked him up for $100 to be the third, maybe the second receiver on their rotation to be like, they were like, this guy's good if he gets his shit together.
It's the lowest risk, high reward type of scenario.
Yep.
It's like, what are we at? $100 for $1 billion industry?
Yeah.
But first season, modest numbers, 27 catches, 413 yards, and 5 touchdowns. But on October 15th, on Monday Night Football, 1990. They're going to Veterans Stadium to play those Eagles.
Well, he's sobered up by this point. No alcohol or anything, and he's found Jesus. That was another thing that was big with him sobering
Going
up,
the
which
Christian Hosoi route.
which is fine. I mean, we're not a religious podcast, or we don't really believe in that, but I believe in it when it helps people really clean their shit up. And
Absolutely,
this
100%.
did it so well that people, and this is what I was about to say, was teammates were like, oh, yeah, he's a good player. I'm glad we have him. To mid-season, they were like, oh, no. He is a great player, maybe the best one out here. And it was like that switch where all of his focus went into football.
Well, speaking from experience, from someone that used to dabble in things of that nature quite heavily.
Receiving.
He was
one of the best high school receivers.
When you stop doing those types of activities, your life goes from like all Madden as far as difficult to rookie mode. And I think you can kind of see that with the trajectory of this gentleman's career as far as football is concerned.
Seriously, though, because he was hampering himself, and now he's just literally destroying. So let's get into Monday Night Football. Because it's one of the best and one of his best reactions.
People called it like a revenge game, and for him and the rest of the Eagles, they were just like, God damn it, he's gotten better. Like there was no ill will. And they even asked him in the post-game press conference if he was mad and sticking it to Buddy Ryan. He's like, no, not at all. I'm glad I got another chance.
That press conference is one of my favorites because they tried to be like,
they tried to bait him.
Yes, they were like, so he said you only catch TDs, and he just literally was just like, I really want to thank Bobby. I really want to thank fucking Bobby Ryan because Buddy Ryan, because he literally gave me 3 years when people would have given me 1, because he was pissing hot a couple of times in that span, and he was literally like, look, other teams would have cut me, and he didn't like say it like that, but he was just like, he gave me 3 years and I have nothing against him. And you were just like, oh, that's some awesome. And you could tell, like, at that point, I feel like everyone's just like, oh, Cris really turned his life around.
Oh, there's not a story here. Let's find the other drug users.
Yes, exactly.
But, 6 catches in the game, 151 yards, and a 78-yard TD catch in a Vikings win.
Well, what they wanted was Cris to be coked up after the game and be like, yeah, fuck Buddy
just
Ryan.
Like, Tony Montana face.
Yes.
Like, yeah, motherfucker, I just scored a 78-yard touchdown.
Well, that's what the media comes in, and that's probably why this is one of my favorite interviews, him fresh off of this being like, no, he gave me my career.
He's just shooting them down Ron DeSantis style and moving on to another target. But 1991, and mind you, this is the era of the Vikings where they are experiencing the Uncle Slippy Fist of the Herschel Walker trade. Go listen to that episode, everybody. So they're just middling in mediocrity under head coach Jerry Burns. But in 1991, Cris is now the star of the receiving corps. 72 catches, 962 yards, 5 touchdowns. But since they have a losing record, the head coach, Jerry Burns, is fired, and Dennis Green is brought in.
And then we see what would be considered like a rebuild. But
it's a quick rebuild, a quick turnaround.
I was just going to say, it's not in the sense that you think of like a rebuild, but he literally was like, all right, we need to get rid of all these veterans. And he cut a lot of veterans where people are like, whoa. And then they had a really
purging like a sorority girl before the formal.
They had a really great turnaround where it was obvious that they had these stars on their team. They just needed a fresh look.
Yeah, well, they needed a fresh look. The problem, and granted, 1992, they started a string of playoff runs under Dennis Green. Carter has 53 catches for 681 yards and 6 TDs. The problem is they would have been higher numbers if he didn't break his clavicle that year. So he misses 4 games. But you start seeing this season, while Cris is becoming a star, they're mediocre at best at quarterback. And this is... We brought it up in the Sterling Sharp episode. There's no Joe Montana. There's no Steve Young like for a Jerry Rice. They don't even have the luxury of an up-and-coming old dong slinger like Brett Favre.
Well, that's the thing that people say about Carter, why he was that much better of a receiver, was he didn't have a in-prime top quarterback.
Because, you'll have guys like Jim McMahon coming up in 1993. He's already past his prime as a quarterback. You have Sean Salisbury, who is more famous for his work on ESPN and insulting the beloved John Clayton. You have Rich Gannon or Brad Johnson, guys, both of whom played each other in the Super Bowl 10 years later, but they haven't reached that peak level, So Rich Gannon won an MVP in Oakland.
He's either getting them too early or too late. And it is an interesting thing with his career was they could not figure out a viable
It was a
quarterback
cluster, what.
Like, I don't think anybody quarterbacked for the Vikings in this era for more than a year and a half. So guys were going into second seasons, but they did not finish that second season.
It's a revolving door where everyone getting stuck in it is just like,
I mean, 94, they brought Warren Moon in. I distinctly remember that.
Yeah.
People being like, this is it. This is the combo. And
so in 93, under McMahon, I didn't want to bring this up. He makes his first
McMahon.
Pro Bowl. He makes his first Pro Bowl, 86 catches, over 1,000 yards receiving and 9 touchdowns. 94, like you said, with Moon, he sets the then NFL record, breaks Sterling Sharp's record with 122 grabs. And let me say, I know we brought it up in the Sharp episode. This is the era where if you make a Pro Bowl at wide receiver in the NFC, you are really good. Because it's Jerry Rice, Sterling Sharp, Chris Carter, Michael Irvin, Herman Moore.
It's Hall of Fame. Yeah, it's Hall of Fame level.
Broke this catches record the following season.
Yes. This is where we see the passing game explode, and these receivers really, some of the best receivers probably we'll ever see.
Yeah, so after 94, they lose in the first round of the playoffs for the third straight season.
Yep. 95. Which I said, it hallmarks this season, which they just aren't tough enough in the playoffs.
Well, this is also the era when the NFC Central was
stacked.
Yeah, everybody but Tampa Bay was good. 95, another 122 catches, but doesn't lead the league because of Herman Moore. 1,371 yards, and led the NFL with 17 touchdowns. Because, this is the era, Chris Berman and Tom Jackson. Chris Carter, what does he do, Tom? All he does is catch touchdowns.
Which they really rammed that into a shit ton of highlights. And I bet even Carter was just like, can you guys stop saying that?
Right.
Because Buddy did so much for me, but it was that.
You think Buddy Ryan, though, even gave a shit?
No, I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure he was just happy.
Most not give a fuck person.
Oh, I'm sure.
They missed the postseason, though, in 95, and that was basically Moon's last healthy year in Minnesota because in 96, Brad Johnson takes over at quarterback, and Carter still has 96 catches for over 1,100 yards, and get ass blasted by the Cowboys in the first round of the playoffs. So he has yet to win a playoff game his entire NFL career. And he's going to the dance, just coming home and whacking off.
And they're not doing well in that first round. They're literally getting blown out by the Redskins, by Dallas, and
wait, the Commanders?
Yeah, excuse me. At that time, they were the Redskins.
Yes, they were. 97, though, he makes his 5th straight Pro Bowl. 89 catches for 1,069 yards and led the league again with 13 touchdown catches. But an old friend comes back into the fold at quarterback this year for the Vikings.
See old Randy come back.
Yeah, see Ramblin' Randall come back. He came off a year where he just retired.
Yeah.
He was just like, I think I'll give this football thing a shot again.
Well, I wonder if it was I need my body to rest for a year and then I can come back, or if he was just kind of like, nah, I'm done. And then, it's an interesting one because Randall Cunningham comes back, and this is the thing that I feel like with Carter, if he had a quarterback that stuck around, they would have just gotten better, which is crazy to say.
Right? So, 97, they make it to the playoffs. They have this incredible comeback in the divisional round at the Meadowlands, and it beat the Giants. So he finally wins a playoff game. Cunningham actually plays in that game because Johnson's out.
Oh, yeah.
So they play the 49ers the following week, who were the number 1 seed, and obviously we all know what happens in that game because they lose. And things are kind of because he's entering year 11, 12 in his NFL career. 98 happens, and the 1998 draft happens. And mind you, they're stacked at receiver. They have Chris Carter, Jake Reed. They have Robert Smith in the backfield, a really good offensive line. Do they even need another receiver, Chris? heading into this season?
This is what a lot of people were talking shit on was, or at least the thing that was going on was just like, well, are they trading Carter? Because they used their first round pick.
Because a certain wide receiver out of Marshall comes out with a long rap sheet of shenanigans.
Well, they feel like they can kind of do and have Cris be kind of like this guy's mentor and be like, this is the right way to do things. This is how we're going to like win as an organization. So they go out and they pick up Randy Moss.
Oh, the super freak. Yes.
And
man.
They have one of the most exciting offenses this next year in 98.
They break the record previously set by our man Joe Theismann in 1983 with the Washington, whatever you want to call them.
The Washington whatevers.
The Washington losers at this point. But anyway, back on track. They set the NFL record for points this season. They're the most exciting offense in the entire, probably that the league has ever seen, because you have Carter, because Reed essentially gets hurt, but also who gets hurt is Brad Johnson, which means Randall Cunningham has an MVP type of season at quarterback with all of these weapons around him. They go 15-1. And I say this, and this is important leading into the playoffs, their one loss was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it's important because Tampa Bay's head coach at this time is Tony Dungy, who was defensive coordinator for probably about the first 3 to 4 seasons. Dennis Green was in Minnesota. Tony Dungy built that 4-3 defense in Minnesota, and after he left to Tampa Bay, he maintained it, which means he knows exactly how to beat it. And in that game that they lost, it was just a steady diet of Mike Allstott basically ass blasting their smaller, quicker defensive line and running up the gut, playing ball control. Because if Randall Cunningham doesn't have the ball, neither is Randy Moss.
Yeah.
So they roll into the playoffs. They destroy the Cardinals in the divisional round, and you're thinking, oh, my God, Cris Carter is going to play in a Super Bowl. All they have to do is beat those dirty bird Atlanta Falcons.
Well, and we see them coming in with a huge, I think they were 13-point favorites, and they just couldn't put it together. This is what I mean by these Viking teams.
So the reason I brought up that Dungy thing is Atlanta is structured offensively very similarly to Tampa Bay in terms of a large power back, Jamal Anderson, when he's healthy, a quarterback who's not afraid to check it down. Basically, even though the Vikings were winning this entire game, this NFC championship, Atlanta hangs around long enough for Gary Anderson to miss a chip shot field goal, which would have iced it with a 10-point lead with 2 minutes left. Game goes to overtime. Cunningham misses Moss on a bomb, which probably would have won the game. And Morton Anderson sends Cris Carter into the emotional abyss, and the Falcons win.
And this was what was sad about this. So a couple of things. There was the Vikings were the biggest home favorites to ever lose a playoff game in this. And they end up losing in overtime. And everybody, because like Randy Moss is young, they have a bunch of these young guys coming up to Cris being like, next year, baby, next year. And he had this thing.
He had like a breakdown. Which is totally understandable. I get it.
That he told his wife, he goes, that was the year. Yeah. I understand this game enough to where like we could have a good season next year, but that was our year to win the Super Bowl. And it was like, that sucks.
Like, as someone who watched his own favorite team lose multiple AFC championships as double-digit favorites, yeah, it's terrible. It is the worst feeling as a fan. I can't imagine what it's like to be a player, because the following weekend, Atlanta goes to the Super Bowl and just gets absolutely annihilated by Denver. And that would have been a great Super Bowl, and it would have been enjoyable to watch Denver lose a Super Bowl living in Denver at the time, and just like, you know, watching Randy Moss torch that overrated secondary.
Well, it would have been a better Super Bowl, but hats off to the Falcons, who literally just grounded, pounded him off the field. So
they gave him the old dirty bird.
Yeah.
99 going into that year. Carter has an incredible year. First team All-Pro, 90 catches, over 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns. Cunningham gets benched for the lovable Jeff George, but it doesn't stop those Vikings. They roll into the playoffs and beat the Cowboys. And then they face Because you're thinking this is the greatest offense we've ever seen in the NFL. It lasted 1 year.
Yep.
It lasted 1 year because they play now the greatest show on turf, led by a grocery bagger and all sorts of fun offensive weapons. They go to St. Louis and lose 49-37 in the divisional round. But Carter is not without accolades. He makes the NFL All-Decade team.
That one was interesting because they said it was two of the best offenses going against each other, and the Vikings had a lead in the first half, and then the Rams just were like, no, we're going to score more points than you.
There were not a hell of a lot of punts in that game.
No.
From what I remember, yeah.
So he makes the All-Decade team. In 2000, he gets his 1,000th catch, second
ever.
ever.
Year. They have another new quarterback.
This was, if you look back on it, and hindsight's fucking 420. But if you look back on it, it is very much like, God, they should have just really went in on a quarterback, stuck with him, and they could have had the greatest offense for like 3 or 4 years without a doubt.
Well, I mean, in this year, and he had a good little stretch there. He even made cover of one of the Maddens that I owned. 2000, his second year, because he was drafted the year before. Pretty much the only quarterback from that draft class that actually, besides McNabb did too, but Dante Culpepper is who we're referring to, who had an incredible year. 96 catches, over 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. Like you said, on November 30th, got his 1,000th reception. Another touchdown catch, as we all know.
It's one of those great little stats that his first and his 1,000th were both touchdown catches. But that's all he does.
And they're back in the NFC Championship, this time as a road team. And what happens, Chris, in this NFC Championship?
They literally can't put it together, and you have these questions where, is it a leadership thing or is it like a coaching thing? Because
I remember watching this game at a Quiznos and I was just like, stop, they're already dead.
Because they literally kind of like lose their composure. And
41-0, 41-10, something like that.
Yeah.
Like basically what the New York Giants did to them is illegal in some states. But you're thinking, hey, everything's great, and then all of the pieces start falling apart for this franchise. Corey Stringer dies, their right tackle. Robert Smith abruptly just retires out of the blue. The defense is getting older and more brittle. John Randall's at the end of his career. So I mean, 2001 is a rude awakening for this franchise that a rebuild needs to come. They end up missing the playoffs. Dennis Green's fired. Carter is under 1,000 yards, though he does have a pretty good season. By the end of the year, he is the franchise's all-time leader in catches. And this is just for the Vikings. This doesn't include Philadelphia, with 1,004 receiving yards, 12,383, and touchdowns with 110. So basically, I'm not going to count 1990, but for 11 seasons, he put up that statistically with those quarterbacks.
Yep.
That's amazing.
I know. And that's why I feel like he really is looked at as, one of the best receivers of this era of receivers. He ends up not playing for the Vikings the next season.
No, he can't get a deal done. He's doing inside the NFL, but finally comes to an agreement with the Dolphins.
And it's just not there. Where I wonder if he felt like he should have been more of the number one or number two, and just wasn't, because when he came back, it just...
Well, that team ran. I think that was the year Ricky Williams had almost 1,900 yards rushing.
All right.
Because Ricky Williams is in that 420 zone.
Hell yeah. That hindsight.
Hindsight.
Hell yeah.
So he comes back, plays the one season, and then decides to retire. Finishes his career with 1,101 catches, 13,899 yards, and 130 touchdowns. 8-time Pro Bowler, 50 greatest Vikings all decade, and he has to wait a little bit to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Well, they like to jerk these guys around a little bit.
At this specific position. So the NFL has some weird... Put Hines Ward in the goddamn Hall of Fame, you sick fucks! Super Bowl MVP, bastards!
Well, I don't think any position gets jerked around more than this. But
at that time there was a huge logjam of guys, and what these dinosaur voters don't understand is by the mid-90s, receiving numbers aren't necessarily created equally. Even though Carter's were the only person who had better numbers than him at the time of his retirement was Jerry Rice.
Yep.
So That's probably why they're screwing Sterling Sharp over, but I'll go on that tangent later. But he waits like an extended period of time while they get these guys in. They shuttle them in like Andre Reed and shit like that. So
yeah, I think he had to wait 4 years or something. I think he was eligible in 2000, maybe it was 3 years.
I think 5.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was something crazy.
Eligible after 2008.
8. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because he got in 13, and he said he was expecting to go in the first year, and then I don't even think he was nominated in 2011, which is fucking crazy.
I think a lot of that has to do with the logjam, because you still see it now. They're like, I don't even think Torrey Holt. I think he just barely got in this year, which is crazy to think, but. The logjam, and I'm going to say off the field, and he could be kind of prickish.
Yes.
And
that was definitely said was by his teammates that he would not hold back if he felt like you weren't giving it 100% or whatever, you know what I mean? He was definitely a leader on the Vikings, and like we said, one of the best receivers of his era.
And got in a little trouble at the rookie symposium. You want to go into that?
Oh, yeah. Who was he working for? Because it was after Fox News or Fox
It was after
Sports.
HBO. I think he was with Fox Sports.
Oh, he was with
Fox.
Okay.
So he comes in. They have the rookie symposium where they're like, hey, wrap it up, everybody, and don't blow all your money and stuff. But he comes in and he's talking to these players, and you think, great, Cris Carter, someone that turned his life around after it was, at rock bottom. And then he's explaining to these rookies, you need to find a fall guy for all your bad activities.
Which is so ridiculous.
Smart. No, it's terrible.
So ridiculously smart. It's just like, you got to pay this guy to be your patsy. That's what it is. And
it's like Bill Burr.
The NFL was just kind of like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then I'm pretty sure now the NFL checks these guys' speeches because of Cris Carter. I'm just saying, because he was literally like telling these guys, like, I know you're going to fuck up. I know you're going to kill a prostitute. I get it.
I know you're going to pull a future Henry Ruggs. We get it.
You're going to plexico burst yourselves.
Now that one was
it.
just comical.
That one was sad. Also, who was that? Reggie White, who blew his hand up? No, it was
Jason Pierre-Paul. Oh, man.
That was like comically sad. I'm going to play with some fireworks. It's just like, why the fuck would you do that?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
But anyway, Cris Carter, one of the best receivers of all time. Thank you for listening to the Sports Experience podcast. Please like and subscribe us on all social medias. We're out there. Please listen, and thank you very much.